In today's video, we're going to be looking at iroiro in the color green, 1110. Can I tell you guys something really embarrassing? I just noticed on here it says it's made with quinoa protein, and for the longest time, I'm like a really bad speller. I thought this was pronounced quinoa. So, if you just want to laugh at me in the comments, that's understandable. So I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that does not correlate with hair levels. I do pictures and clips near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. 1 is pink, red, and green are across from each other on the color wheel, so I thought maybe we could see if the green would cover any pink in the hair. 2 is gray, 3 is a natural red, 4 is black, and then 4 going all the way up to number 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then number 12 is like a toned version of number 11. But I will say today this toned swatch leans very, very gray. So to start, I'm going to take the dye directly out of the container and I'll be putting it at the top of each swatch. Some people do like to dilute their dyes though, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch as well. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take dye differently. I've also noticed that different screens and monitors can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're gonna do a 1:4 ratio, so that is 1 part dye to 4 parts diluter. If you're unsure what diluter is, the simple answer I like to give out is that it's just something that lightens the color of the dye, and I always just use a plain white conditioner for diluting. All right, I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I will meet you back here. Let's start with number 1. So number 1 was pink, and surprisingly, the green covered both on the direct dye portion and the diluted portion pretty well. There are some spots near the top where I probably didn't apply as much that still look a tiny bit pink, but for the most part, it really did cover. I was going to say that number 2 looks the most cool toned, and it was gray before, but I felt like it leaned a little bit blue for a gray. So keep that in mind. If you have gray hair, it could turn out kind of anywhere between 2 and 12, I would say, depending on how cool toned your gray hair is. Because like I said in the beginning of the video, I felt like the number 12 one was a lot more gray than usual. usual, but honestly, I feel like that more so applies to the diluted section. The direct dye portion doesn't look too far off from each other. The gray one just looks maybe a little bit darker, but I feel like the bluish in the gray doesn't really affect it as much on top as it does on the bottom, but they're both covered and they both look green. The number 3, I feel like there is a slight green hue, but it looks much closer to a brown than a green or a red, so that's interesting. And then the diluted section didn't really seem to do much, if anything. Number 4, there's no difference. 5, there might be a very slight difference, but I can't really see much until you get to number 7. There is a slight green hue on number 6, but I feel like that's something you'd only really see in more harsher lighting conditions. And then my advice would be to only use this if you have maximum like light brown hair, maybe closer to dark blonde or lighter. You can definitely see the green on number 8, but I feel like it loses its vibrancy, and I like it better on 9 and upward. I don't really mind it on number 7 either. The depth of the brown underneath kind of helps it to keep a depth in the direct dye portion, but I don't know if it would stay in your hair after you washed it a couple times. I feel like, especially if you have virgin hair, it might just wash right out. And I won't lie, my personal favorite is actually number 12. I really like how it looks on number 12. It's not bad on 10 or 11 either. I just feel like on number 11, it's not neon, but it looks almost like it could be. It's kind of interesting. As for the diluted section, I feel like that one looks the best on the platinum blonde and then the toned one as well. As for undertones, I think it's pretty much a true green. It might lean just a slight bit cool toned. There's not a ton of yellow in this green. That's what I see anyways. So for comparisons, I actually don't have any greens like this. I will just say that right now. I don't have any dupes currently. So I will show you 2 of my closer matching greens. I'm gonna start with Lunar Tides in the color Beetle Green. This is comparable to number 12, 11, and 10. If you hear it jingling, my dog is investigating the area. But Beetle Green is marketed as a more bluish green. Online, it definitely looks closer to maybe a seafoam-esque green, but when I did it, it definitely didn't turn out like the pictures online. Honestly, I do feel like the undertones are not too far from each other, but Beetle Green is definitely a lot more dusty looking in comparison to the iroiro green, and you can especially see that on the diluted section here. It's also a little less dark and a little less pigmented as well, which I think dustier dyes tend to not be as pigmented, but I could be wrong. The other comparison I had for today is Arctic Fox in the color Iris Green. This is comparable to number 12, 11, and number 10. So again, you can see Iris Green is definitely not as bright. It's also a little bit more on that like muted smoky side. But I also feel like the Arctic Fox Iris Green isn't as pigmented either. And again, it could be because of that smokiness that it has in comparison. And to me, this actually looks a little bit more smoky than the Beetle Green. And an honorable mention is gonna be Lime Crime in the color Jello. That one is pretty similar to like Beetle Green, Iris Green. I don't really have any greens that are as pigmented and bright as this one. The rest of my greens are much darker and less true green. All right, so now I'd like to get into our before and after clips. Those, as well as anything filmed near the end of the video, will all be done in natural lighting. I hope this video helped. Of course, if you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do dyes that do not test on animals. Thank you to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.